All right, for chapter 2, we're going to talk about my childhood. I feel like a big part of everyone's life is their childhood. It's when you're young, when you have a lot of first experiences, and a lot of it shapes how you are, at least during your teenage years and also in your adult years. And I feel like I hold the belief that you can definitely move past it. You can grow from it. You can, if there were any strong emotional events that were not great, very bad events, I do believe that you can move past it and still be a very, very strong individual despite it. But it is a big part of everyone's life, and I want to talk about it. This is what this episode is going to be about. I'm going to reflect. And yeah, so life reflection, childhood. Let's get to it. The first memory that I have that I can recall vividly is the first day of school, the first day of preschool. I went to a school called Sunshine Preschool, or Sunshine, was it preschool or kindergarten? It was both. And the first day of school, I remember holding my mom's hand. They were about to drop me off, but I didn't realize that. I kind of just was like at a place. I was like, oh, what is this place? I don't really know what's going on. And all of a sudden, my mom lets go of my hand, says to like go with the other lady. They're like leaving, and I'm like, what's even happening? I don't realize what's happening. And then I just start crying because I want my mom, but she's just waving and leaving. And this other lady's like telling me to follow her. So I just start bawling, and I still did what she said and followed her. And I remember them putting like a bowl of cereal in front of me. It was like Apple Jacks or something like that. And I just sat there crying with all the other kids there as well. They seemed to, I don't recall like any details of the other kids. I just remember other kids being there. I'm sure someone was looking at me or staring at me because I was the only one crying, I think. And after that, I don't remember much, to be honest. I remember writing the alphabets a little bit, but that's about it. Like, I don't have too many memories from preschool and kindergarten. There was another time, actually. I was having a upset stomach, and oddly in the preschool and kindergarten, or the school, the toilets were not separated. There was nothing blocking them. So there was like a set of 8 toilets, sort of by a 4x2 grid, basically. And I was pooping because I needed to, basically like diarrhea. And I just felt terrible. And then like these kids would randomly come in and watch me and stuff like that. And I was like, what the heck's happening? Well, they wouldn't watch me. They would do their thing, but I felt like super embarrassed, basically. And I remember having to play a game right after that involved jumping. So I was like, oh my gosh, why is this happening to me? So that was in preschool as well, preschool or kindergarten. And then I also remember pooping my pants during one of the nap times. So yeah, that is most of my memories in terms of like preschool and kindergarten. I also remember actually there was this, I think, Christmas type of event where everyone participates, you get a present from someone else. It was probably some sort of like Secret Santa thing. And I remember us giving a gift to someone else. And I remember really wanting that gift. It was like something related to Pokemon, and it's this cool thing where it was like an orb shaped thing, almost like a snow globe like thing. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was really cool. And I remember being very jealous of it. And then the final memory probably is also related to a toy, is when I told one of the teachers that my feet, or one of the teachers asked me why wasn't I playing on the playground. And it was because I had eczema on my feet, and I guess shoes back then, like either shoes back then or shoes in general, absorb sand. And that was the reason why, because of the eczema. If I were to go on the playground, my feet would get more irritated, and I just couldn't do it. So I explained that to the teacher, and the teacher was like, I guess the teacher didn't buy it, because what the teacher did was she was like, okay, look over there. And then she went out, she walked to like the other side of the playground, and then she had a toy, and then she told me to come over there. I had to walk into the sand, into the playground, and grab the toy. And then I got to keep the toy. It was a toy that I had for a very long time. I don't have it anymore, unfortunately, I don't think. But it was just like this robot type of thing with like a rhino. And I think, yeah, it was just a really, really cool toy that I had for a very long time. And that memory was very nice. That lady was very nice, that teacher. And thinking about it now, that was a very, very generous thing to do. But at the same time, it was kind of like, I guess she just didn't listen to me, or I probably didn't explain it very well as a kid, saying like I had eczema on my feet and whatnot. I probably just said like, oh yeah, I can't because my mom or dad told me I can't, like my feet will get hurt or whatever. But yeah, she just encouraged me to try it anyways. And I can't remember whether or not I actually started going on the playground or not. But yeah, that was some of my first memories ever. And aside from them being like somewhat cute memories, somewhat like interesting and laughable at the same time, two of those memories involve like pooping, unfortunately. I remember we can be a bit more general now because like I don't want to just talk about every single memory from here on out because I do have a fair amount. I'll talk about some of the highlights, I suppose. So one thing in general that I remember as a kid is that I was very, very active. I was always running around. I was always playing and trying to do something. I played a lot of games as a kid, for sure. Like I remember playing the Game Boy, playing like the first Game Boy game for Fire Emblem that came out. I played that a lot. I played a lot of Mario stuff. We had like a Super Nintendo. Played with my cousins a lot because we lived basically right next to our cousins, and me and my sister played sometimes. We fought sometimes, but we mostly played. And there were times where, so I'm an Asian American, and there were times where like whenever we got in trouble, our dad would tell us to kneel, and we would kneel next to like, there's a spot right next to the TV, I think, and we would kneel there, and sometimes they would just have us do it for a duration. Sometimes my dad would actually like get like, I think either a hanger or his belt. I think it was a hanger, and just like start whipping us until we were crying and until we were apologetic about whatever we caused, whatever trouble we caused. That is the standard Asian American upbringing, I'd say. If you're born before 2000s, probably. Before the 2010s, probably. I know my cousin who was born around, I think after 2004 or so, didn't have that experience, but my cousins that were born 2000 and before that also had that experience. I guess there was a movement of saying, hey, don't abuse the children. so that's a good thing for sure. And I do think that was a very, not so great time. I think the worst of it was this one time when I was playing with my cousin. I actually made this into a story video at some point. And we were playing with a water bottle. We were throwing it at each other, and I ended up hitting her head with the cap, the bottle cap. It's those classic like Arrowhead water bottles or whatever, 500 milliliter. And then she started bleeding. Her forehead started bleeding. And my grandma was there. She was freaked out. They called my dad, and my dad came by and was like, is everything okay? And then after that, everything seemed fine. I felt guilty for sure. And then when I was trying to sleep at night, all of a sudden my dad came home. He would oftentimes come home pretty late, and then he told me to come out. I went outside. It was pretty late. I don't remember exactly what time it was, but it was late enough to be dark. It was fully dark, and it was kind of cold outside, and he told me to kneel on the ground. Then he, again with either a hanger or a belt, this time around I can't remember for sure. Most of the time he used a hanger, so it probably was consistent. And he would basically hit me with it until I cried really, really loudly. And because my cousins lived right next to me, they could see outside the window that was going on. So right after that, my dad brought me to their house, rang the doorbell, and my cousin was there with her parents, and my dad was like telling me to say sorry and everything. And I remember my uncle. My uncle is a very kind person. He was saying like, "Oh yeah, that's fine. You don't have to do that. All that stuff." I mean, ironically, my uncle also still hit my cousins whenever they had were causing trouble. But overall, he is a kind person. I think sometimes those traditions are just passed along to everyone, even if they aren't a bad person. It's just kind of like the thing they do. But for me, that was definitely quite a traumatic event, I'd say. Like just being hit like that and just being like punished in that way, even though I didn't mean to do any harm. It was all very, very sudden, all very out of the blue. I wasn't expecting it. And I know I'm talking about it in a somewhat nonchalant way, but it was definitely, I really, really disagree with those practices. I'm never going to do that to my own kids if I have kids. So yeah, it's something that definitely I'm glad the newer generations have changed. But in terms of the way it's affected me, I don't really think that it held a really big role in how it shaped me. At least not that I can see. I understand that, thinking about it now, yes, I think I've moved past it completely. But there were some memories related to being punished, the feeling that you need to be punished if you do something wrong. I remember I think I might have had an argument with my grandma at some point when I was in high school, and I just felt really, really guilty for it, and ended up just kneeling for a good 30 minutes or so near my mom's room or something like that, just to show her that, I punished myself, just to show her that, I do feel regret and all that stuff. So yeah, it definitely affected me in high school. There was this sense of being somewhat, not necessarily afraid. In a way, yes, a little bit afraid, because I was probably worried about, what my mom would say, what my mom would do. So, I'm just going to punish myself first. And that, I don't think that's the healthiest approach. What I should do is apologize and communicate better and, face it and actually own up to it to my grandma if I made a mistake, not punish myself in that way. So in a way, I sort of had a twisted view of what I should do if I made a mistake. But I definitely do not have that inside of me anymore. Luckily, thankfully. These days, I try my best to treat myself with kindness and understand that mistakes do happen, no matter what. No matter how good of a person you are, no matter how good your intentions are, there will always be some mistakes that happen when you're dealing with other people. And not even just other people, but in general, because, there's probability, statistics, chances. It's not like you're a perfect human being. There are bound to be some mistakes that will happen in your life, and how you approach it is a very important aspect of how you live your life. But thinking back on it right now, every person approaches it differently. And I think the way that I sort of reacted to all of the negativity, all of the punishing and yelling, and because that's kind of what my household was. It was a lot of noise, a lot of energy, and a lot of it was not great, especially while, growing up. My mom and my dad went through a lot of hardship. Basically, they ended up divorcing. That was one of the biggest highlights in terms of what shaped me, and a really, really big moment in my life. I'll probably dedicate an entire episode to it. So I'll just brush through it a little bit for this one. But basically, if we're talking about my childhood experience, a lot of it involved my parents, and sort of in a way oversights by them, as well as just them not really understanding how to be good parents. Because oftentimes there would be a lot of fighting between them, and we would hear it. And that was sort of my natural environment. It was Like I would hear arguing and fighting between them, and so much negative energy. My father was always drunk, and he would hit the walls, he would hit the objects, he would break things, and it was just not a great place for a kid to grow up. Yet somehow, me and my sister, my sister for sure has done some reflection on this and has gone to therapy for these things, and definitely has sought apologies from my parents. For me personally, I don't feel like I need that. I don't feel like I need apologies. I rather simply need to understand how it affected me overall. And I think, like, me right now talking about it, I do feel something inside of myself. I do feel like, a sense of wrongness. Like that should not have been the way we grew up, me and my sister. And a part of it is like in us, other people, maybe they grew up with great parents and everything. They will never understand this feeling of like growing up in an environment that feels like you're somewhat in danger, that you're somewhat like in a place where at any moment you can hear yelling, you can hear something break. And for me as a kid, like this was probably, thinking about it now, a lot of these things are coming up as I talk, but I have processed everything and I'm better now. But let's talk about in terms of like when I was a kid. When I was a kid, these things actually really affected me. When I was a kid, what I did, what I'm very, very ashamed of having done is I lashed out on other people. So my cousin was one of my targets, and sometimes I would like just punch him. Like whenever he did something that annoyed me, I just punch his arm. I never punched his face. I only punched his face once when we were sparring in high school. So that's a different situation. But I punched his arm, sometimes his legs or whatever, and he would cry. He was also kind of a bully himself. Probably some of that had to do with me. Like bullies tend to have this source of anger and negative energy coming at them, so they need a place to release it, so they release it on other people. And that was basically what I was. I was a bully to my cousin. And it's basically mostly my cousin, and there was also a few other people that I remember in seventh grade in middle school. I was an angry kid. I was a very, very angry kid, especially in elementary school and middle school. So there's this one time this guy just like randomly grabbed my water bottle, drank from it, and threw it on the ground. And I was like, what the hell is this guy doing? This was like during PE or something, like the first day. And the first day of school, I was like, okay, I once it happened, I was like surprised. I didn't really know how to react. But then after it happened, during the next period, which was math, I was like, yo, I'm going to find this guy. I'm going to beat the shit out of him. Like, that's what I'm going to do. So I went outside of the classroom after the bell rang. It was like, I think the second to last class or the last class. And afterwards, after school, after the bell rang, I was just like trying to look for him. And I was fully intending on beating the shit out of him. Like if I saw him, I was just going to go straight up to him and punch him in the face. But I did not see him. And I think the next day I ended up cooling off. So I was okay. But yeah, that was like my full intention right there. And I do remember in fourth grade, was it fourth grade? It was fourth grade. We were playing football. It was 2-hand touch football. So you just have to like touch the people with 2 hands. And then that's the equivalent of tackling them down for real football. But we were playing that, and there was this moment where I think some interference happened, pass interference maybe, from one of my friends when I was about to catch the ball. And when that happened, I got really angry, and we started like yelling at each other back and forth. And some of our friends came over, and they're realizing that things are escalating. So at a certain point, both of us are just yelling at each other, and then I start actually charging at him, but my friends stopped me. I was full on intending on trying to beat the shit out of him. But again, Also, like, I was also a very small kid, but I still had so much anger and so much like just pent up rage inside of me. I think so much so that I spent a lot of it as a kid, as a middle schooler, as a high schooler, somewhat as well, to the point where, like, by the time I hit college, all the rage just left me. It was like I spent so much time being negative in a way, and having those sort of things affect me back then, that as an adult, I hardly ever get angry. So that's how those things affected me as I was a kid. I think at first, when I was saying, I was speaking about this nonchalantly and blah, 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 I was thinking more so of how it affected me in terms of how I became as of this moment. But it definitely affected me as a kid, in my childhood and in my teenage years, for sure. So I think that's sort of what you kind of have to expect, because, when you do that, when you're in that environment where it's so negative, when you're taking in so much negative energy, you got to release it. It's just natural. It's the nature of things. And that's what happened when I was a kid. And I would, like I said, I didn't even say it yet, but the most shameful moment I had was when I hit my cousin. It wasn't just the punching, but I actually, like, there was this one time, I don't even know why. I was just telling my cousin, okay, you can't watch these shows. Like, I was just being strict with him. You can't watch like Cartoon Network or whatever, because I wanted to gatekeep it or something like that as a kid. It's a very strange thing, but I just wanted to do that. And when I did it and I found him or saw him watching those shows, I was like, yo, why didn't you listen to me? Mind you, this is when I was like, what? I think 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old. Like, no 10-year-old should be doing that. Like, it's so rageful. It's so bad. But like, I told him to kneel, and I started hitting him. Like, I think I grabbed an object or something and started hitting him, because that's the way I was punished. That's the way I learned to punish people. And it was terrible. Like, honestly, one of the most shameful things I've ever done in my life. And this was when I was a child, and this was because that's how I learned it. And damn, like, I'm feeling it right now. Like, I feel not just shame, but like regret. I feel like, I guess I feel pain from remembering it. And I really wasn't expecting this. Wow. Maybe this is what therapy helps with, except I'm not talking to a therapist. I'm talking to myself, or at least a microphone. But damn, like, yeah, that really shouldn't have been the way things were. Oh man, I gotta edit this, so I'm gonna cut out some parts where I'm just silent and like crying a little bit. But I'm amazed that I'm actually crying. Like, I didn't really feel like I was ready for this, I guess. But damn, I think one of the worst parts is it's like me and my cousin aren't really close anymore, and I don't blame him. Like, for a while when we were growing up, he would always like sort of flinch whenever I was around him, because he expected me to hit him. And like, that is just terrible. We still, obviously, we're family, and we care for each other, and we do see each other and occasionally hang out. But we hung out a good amount actually in college, when I was in college. And we would do stuff together. We'd dance together. We had a good relationship together, like, once I hit college. And I told him, like, I wasn't like that anymore. And I said sorry for the things that I did. But one of the worst parts is like, when we talked, and when I heard him talk about his childhood and how he was basically also doing that to other people. Like, he said that, oh yeah, there was just one time in like elementary school or somewhere in his childhood where he also like hit other people or like was bullying someone else. And I was like, damn, that was probably because of me. I was continuing that cycle of, I was causing that cycle of like anger, negative energy, like hatred, and just bullying. Like, and to me, like, I've known this, but like saying it out loud and really reflecting on it, like, that's just terrible. Yeah, I'm more than glad that that's not the way things should be. And for the people that have experienced this, and then maybe some people who are still experiencing it because of, I don't know, because of twisted parents or whatever, like, damn, I understand. And I really, really hope that people were able to process it and also like move past it. Like, I feel like I have moved past it, but at the same time, I still feel it, you know? And I guess I didn't realize how much of it I still felt until I really got into it. But yeah, that hit me like a truck. Shit. Yeah, this is gonna be kind of a heavy thing, isn't it? Not everything in my life was great. And you know, these days I'm really, really grateful for the fact that things generally are really, really good. But yeah, I'm gonna try to pull myself together right now because yeah, I gotta continue this. But yeah, maybe that can be the primary topic, I guess. It's sort of like a surprise one. Cycle of bullying, hatred, the cycle of negativity, like the fact that as a child I was in that environment, that I experienced that, and that's the way things sort of were for a lot of, like I said, Asian American kids, maybe the first, I'm not sure how it works, like it just with immigrant parents basically. And maybe even past that, I don't know. Like I haven't talked to enough people to know for sure how common this experience is. But for the most part, like I believe it is pretty common. But to be honest, like I said, I don't know. I just know that my cousins experience the same things, but I don't recall that many of my friends saying that they experienced something similar. Either way, like it should never have been like that. And from here on, I really hope that the world moves towards the right direction and it's not like that for future generations of children. Anyways, I think I might just cut this episode a little bit short because this was a heavy topic, heavier than I expected for me. I think exploring my childhood is going to be a bit difficult. You tend to remember things fondly. You tend to remember a lot of the good, and me remembering that I was playful, that I always was playing a game or having fun or doing something. That was part of it. I'm amazed how resilient kids are. They find a way to still make things fun and still make things. I remember being like quite creative. I would just make up games to play with my cousins and sister all the time. But like in the midst of all of that, like still experiencing the stuff that I did with how my parents were and the way we were punished, like it's quite fascinating how resilient kids are. But yeah, just to finish off the topic and my thoughts on it, I 100% regret ever having bullied my cousin, and regret even more that I caused him to bully other people. But I don't blame myself. I definitely apologized for it and I definitely regretted it, but I don't blame myself because of the fact that I was a kid and the fact that the environment and my father and just the way things were caused it, and I didn't know better. And a lot of, I think, my high school and college life, and even after college, this is something that was affected by it, also by the divorce, but it's just not having a strong male role model in my life. I feel like because the divorce did happen like when I was young, I think when I was like 11, 12, around that time, I always sought a male role model afterwards, after the divorce. That's something that I noticed in myself very often. But again, I might be going too far into this. I don't want to make this episode too long. And I already spent some time crying, so let's end this for now. This is going to be chapter 2, and it's basically one of the biggest pains in my childhood. Yeah, we'll continue tomorrow. We'll get to the divorce. I think it's probably one of the most pivotal, biggest things ever in my life. And I might as well get it out of the way first.